I was talking to another guy who was like, I'm just going to get divorced. I'm going to go talk to a divorce attorney, scheduling it, the whole nine. And the reason is because he didn't feel he could be himself in his house. So I go, dude, just be yourself. Like, what's the worst case scenario? Oh, she's going to leave you and you're going to get divorced, which you're planning on doing anyway. So meanwhile, you're just pretending and you're unhappy. Forget that.
Yeah.
Be you.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the TPM Show. And once again, Chris and I are here, and we want to talk about today, when's enough going to be enough? Like, really, when is it going to be enough? And Chris, you and I were talking about this offline again, as all these great things happen. We're just joking, the whole conversation we just had, like, oh man, we should have recorded that. But this also, I think, is really important for all men to listen to, and women, if that's good. But so many times people think, well, it's not that bad. Oh, I don't need to change yet, or I don't need to do something yet because it's tolerable. Do you hear that a lot with the guys you're talking to?
Yeah, I don't hear it as much as I can just feel it when they explain their situation. And I can relate because I didn't make a lot of those changes till my world was crashing down.
Okay.
Right. And so when I do get these guys on the call and they start opening up and let me know what's going on, and I recognize that some of these guys are they're not in as bad of a situation as I was in. And I kind of admired that. I admired the fact that these guys kind of see they're heading in a bad direction and they're stepping up before everything's coming crashing down. And I was like, man, I wish I would have done that.
Well, do you think some of them are putting on a front?
Yes. I do think so. I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure, but I also think a lot of times that they just don't know what the next step is, right? They know, they can feel it, that their wives aren't happy and they just don't know. And so they just are trying to look for something, right? Like, yeah.
I can see that. For a lot of people, there's this idea of not doing it, right? So it's kind of that burying your head in the sand or, I really shouldn't complain. I hear this from a lot of guys, like, my life's not that bad. What do I have to complain about? Stiff upper lip type thing. And then they'll use I did this, I grew up in a middle-class family, in Orange County, California. So what do I can't complain about anything. I can't complain about abuse in my childhood. I can't complain about anything that happened to me because, hey, at the end of the day, look at the Palestinian refugees or look what's happening in Ukraine or child trafficking. I wasn't trafficked. So who am I to complain about this stuff? And it really comes down again to this thing. I feel like, I guess this is my chant, if you will, this today is, you deserve more than average, right? Average isn't good enough. And I also give kudos to guys who take action early. You should do that. But at the same time, how many times we look at the 5 territories or any area of our life, are we just accepting average?
Yeah, we fall into that comfort. And from there, the only way to get out of that is to take action. And there's that scare of taking those steps forward, that fear of failing. Like, there's a lot of things that fall into that keep us frozen into that space. And that is where a lot of guys are stuck in their relationships.
They are. I guess it is kind of the fear of failure, or trying to think about where I do this in my life. And as we're talking about it, I think there are some times when I'm like, okay, I got to make a change, and I instantly feel tired, right? Like, not today, It's almost like my energy goes from a 10 because we just had a great conversation, and it goes down to a 2 as I kind of tune into my body of like, I have to go take a nap, go into that energy of not wanting to do it, which as a coach tells me that there's some kind of psychological block. Like, what's the real reason I'm not taking action?
What do you see those blocks are? Is there common ones that you find in the guys?
Oh yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of the men that we work with, struggling in their marriage, right? And so one of the blocks that I see very commonly is the fear of upsetting the apple cart, right?
That's what I was thinking,
Yeah, I don't want to upset things. Things aren't good, but they could get worse. And if I don't do anything, then I should be okay. Right? It's that kind of mentality when what they realize is their partner on the other side is like, I don't know if things can get worse. And so I'm going to check out and get, I'm going to pull the ripcord on the parachute before the plane crashes. And they just the men don't realize that. She's not waiting around. And so your worst case scenario is going to happen by your inaction.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's something that just came up is like speaking your truth in those conversations that they're going to be uncomfortable, but so you don't have them, right? And so you kind of hide. And that's a lot of those relationships are based around not having those conversations, not expressing your needs and wants, your hurts and your emotions as the man and the male in the relationship, like, and not just taking all, he's taking hers.
I mean, I can't count the number of times I've heard of guys say that he's going to have an affair to get his sexual needs met, and he had talked to his wife about it. Not the affair, but what his needs are. And because talking to his wife about it, she might reject him. Well, that's not what he'd say. I don't talk to her about that kind of stuff. Like, okay, so you're going to go get divorced or go have an affair, right? Which is probably not going to lead you down the path you want to lead in, and only because you're scared. That's what it is. It's a fear of rejection.
Yeah.
And we all have fear of rejection. I mean, at least I do, right? And I think everybody does in certain scenarios. And like most fears, fear, false evidence appearing real, or false evidence about reality, either one, they both go the same space.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. And literally it baffles me. I get it, but also baffles me that guy's like, you know what? I'm going to burn the marriage down because I don't want to have a conversation, And I see this in other areas too. So it's not just sexually. I was talking to another guy who was like, I'm just going to get divorced. I'm going to go talk to a divorce attorney, scheduling it, the whole nine. And the reason is because he didn't feel he could be himself in his house. So I go, dude, just be yourself. Like, what's the worst case scenario? Oh, she's going to leave you and you're going to get divorced, which you're planning on doing anyway. So meanwhile, you're just pretending and you're unhappy. Forget that.
Yeah.
Be you.
Yeah.
And when he started being himself, guess what happened? First, she tested him and it went bad, but that was only for a day. After that, because he was resolute that this is who I am, she right in line, she's like basically, thank God you showed up. I've been waiting for you forever, And he's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
I put himself in his own purgatory.
Yeah. I think it's so hard sometimes for guys, even to their wives, to express their emotions and be able to do that. And so, because we were trained not to, right? Conditioned so young to hold that back, and then we're expected to. But when we don't do it, now we have all this resentment. All these things all these little fires are popping up all over in our household because of it.
Yeah. And it's also, we were talking about the client that was at my gym that lost 25 pounds, and we gave him the 25-pound weight plate. And he was just so used to being obese that walking up the stairs being winded or having to take a pause was just life to him. It'd become the norm.
Yeah.
And he forgot the fact that once he lost 25 pounds, he could walk up the stairs, walk up the next flight of stairs, or go for a hike now.
Yeah.
Right. And do all these things that were previously impossible. But he didn't look at them as impossible. He just looked at them as normal.
Yeah, I mean, I can personally relate to that. Like, for the years I was married, I wouldn't express myself, who I was as a sexual being, my needs and wants, because I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be judged, right? I felt shame. But when I got to a point that I was able to do that, the amount of weight that came off of me, that I was finally expressed what that was, those needs and wants and desires as a man, it was huge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think I'm going to guess you were like, what is she going to say? What is she going to think about me? Is she going to tell everybody else,
Yeah, it's a very vulnerable spot for a man, as their sexuality.
Yeah. I think, all men, have different levels of vulnerability at different areas of sexuality for sure in our culture. In our culture, sexuality is just not talked about, which is so crazy, right? I mean, like, how'd your kids born?
That's why we're sitting here.
Yeah, it's exactly right. But it's not talked about, and it's repressed so much. And we see, because of that repression, so many other things come out of that don't work out for people. sexual abuse, affairs, or what I think is probably one of the worst things is just complete repression of desires.
Sexless marriages.
Sexless marriages, or I mean, I got to imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were in that state in your marriage, you kind of probably thought, well, this is just what it's going to be. I'm just not going to be happy.
Yeah, it was. And then it turns those situations transactional.
Yes.
Right. And so there's fewer times of sex. There's this weird pressure that's on there. It just doesn't, the enjoyment isn't there. Right. And so you can really set in and accept that, express yourself for who that is. And that also, what we don't realize is there's also a beautiful connection that can happen during those transitions. So when I was able to do that, it allowed her to open up that way. And now there's this deep, emotional, intimate connection, which then sparks some great other things. Right?
Yeah. So when you opened up, did she share things about herself that she had been
absolutely
back?
Yeah. Yeah. She was, and she was more open to me than I was for sure. But because of that, she was really able to express herself fully.
That's awesome. I mean, and as a man, right, that's what we want. We want a woman to feel like she can express herself fully, because then you get the feminine version of her, the full version of her.
Yep.
I think men would be shocked to, I mean, again, going back to I call it my previous life, owning a gym. Chris, so it was a private training studio in Santa Barbara, California. It was 2 stories. I ran 2 other companies in the second story, but it was an open floor plan. And in there, we had air-conditioned ducts and heating ducts, right? And those vents went right up to my office. So if you can imagine a group of women coming in with a female trainer, and then all the talk that they're talking about going right up to my... I will tell you...
I would pay to be a fly on that wall.
I would tell you, I know this for a fact. The guys listening to this are going, yeah, but my wife's not interested in sex. That's BS. She might not be interested in having sex with you, but she is. I think women are probably more sexual than men, based on all things that I hear and have heard. But the issue is for men, if they're like, hey, I'm in a sexless marriage, or I hear this often from guys, yeah, my wife's just not interested in sex. I'm like, there's a reason 50 Shades of Grey sold a ton of copies and all these other books.
Yeah.
My wife's in a book club, and I say that in air quotes, with a bunch of women. And I'm like, what's the book about? And she started telling me about that. That's basically a porn. You know, it's erotica, you know, it's all these women's books. I remember going as a kid into the grocery stores and stuff, you know, shopping with my mom and just seeing these books with this ripped, muscular guy holding a woman on the cover, and these books that were written for women, they're all about the fantasy and things. And women are reading these and they're digesting them. And so it's not that she doesn't want sex. It's just right now, for whatever reason, probably the way we show up, she didn't want to have sex with you.
Yeah, it's crazy that I have quite a few conversations with women who are in a divorce or have been divorced. And they open up to about what kind of happened, like where it is. And it's amazing to hear. And the 2 most common things I hear, sexless marriage, right? Or there was, but there was no connection.
Yeah.
2 most common things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, connection's everything. I always say, this is something I've probably heard it from someplace else, but I don't know where. But for a woman to want to have sex, there needs to be connection. Men get connection from sex. So it's such a horrible deal, right? Like we need, so my wife and I, if we feel disconnected, we will have sex, which is a horrible thing for me, as you can imagine, but that gets us on the same page quickly and lets us connect, because we'll connect through that realm.
But I also think we might be conditioned as men that way too, because I think, as you can agree, once we've learned that emotional connection at the beginning is such a powerful, it's like putting gas on the fire.
Hey guys, I wanted to interrupt this episode because it's dawned on me that many of you guys aren't aware that we actually have a book on how to save your marriage without talking about it. Now, thousands of men have read it, they've reviewed it, and I want to give you the opportunity to do the same. If you're interested in grabbing it, it's a short read, but it's helped a lot of men just like you. And maybe you're not interested in the activation method yet, but this is a small entry point that can really turn things around for you. Go over on Amazon. We have it priced as cheap as Amazon will let us. And that way you have a resource that you can use right now to start getting some results in your marriage. Now let's get back to the episode.
It leads to so much more, right?
100%.
And so I think that's we've got it mixed up. Is that what they want is actually very similar to what we want.
It's the same.
Yeah.
It really is. In my experience, at least for me and a lot of guys, will feel more connected when we're intimate. And that intimacy needs to have connection within it, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I was talking to another guy who says, "Oh, I have sex with my wife twice a week," and she just lays there.
It's like couples masturbation.
It's well, yeah, she just does it because it's her wife. She feels it's her wifely duty. It's a religious thing, right? He hates it. Obviously, he's like, I don't want that. I want something totally different. Which I respect that he wants something different, and he's working towards that. And to free his wife up. And people have hangups, right, and what have you. But the point is like, when's enough? When are you going to stop settling for average? Right? In all areas: self, health, wealth, relationships, business. The 5 territories we talk about. Your business, for guys that are listening to this, if your business is just doing okay, when are you going to stop settling for that? Like you're in there, do the best job you can. In your health, when are you going to stop settling? I'm not saying everybody needs to be a cover model, but at least are you doing something to help your wellness? And it doesn't mean looking good, but it's your inner health and how you're feeling with inside your body. And then your relationships, man, that's a big one, because you got one shot at this game we call life. You better be having fun.
Yeah, don't get comfortable.
Don't get comfortable. Yeah, that's a great point. Say more on that.
Yeah, I mean, we all fall into that. There's times we need those breaks and those rests on there too, but when we're in our comfort stage, there's no growth there. There's no, and we all know that the things that we go and challenge ourselves, you go do something difficult. You say you're going to hike a mountain that you've never hiked and wanted to summit. The feeling that you get when you get to the top, and it's hard, right? The harder things we do are those bigger awards that we can feel for ourselves. And the only thing that keeps us from moving forward is that fear of the failure not doing it. But even if I try to climb that mountain and I got halfway up, and but I beat my last time that I went up the mountain, that's still a win. That's how we have to look at things, right?
100%. It's the effort we put in and actually going for it and going after what you want. I hear this oftentimes from guys too, is they don't know what they want. They've lost their quote vision, right? Or lost their passion. And really that's a sign that they've lost the attunement to themselves, right? The connection to themselves. Next door to us right now, there are a group of men going through the Alpha Reset, which is our transformational experience that we put men through, or men get to go through. We don't put them through it. And one of the number one things that comes out of that is clarity, right? Guys talk about that all the time, like clarity of vision. Usually with those groups, there's 1 or 2 guys that's like, I haven't had a vision for a long time, or I don't know clarity of my next steps. Could be in their business or relationships or just their life. Like, I don't know what I want. I don't know how to have fun anymore. And then coming out of something like that, they can see clearly because they've experienced like, hey, average isn't going to cut it. There's a lot more out there for me.
Yeah, I've been through that. Yeah. And the clarity is exactly what you get, because also that event allows you to release a lot of things. And how can you see when you're holding on to so much that's in front of you? Yeah,
I mean, it's really, really tough. And some guys come out of that experience, realizing how amazing their wife is. Some guys come out of that experience getting clear that, hey, maybe I don't want to be in this anymore. That's a little bit more rare. Oftentimes we talk about average, but a lot of the guys will say, oh crap, she's been giving me a message for a long time about, things not working out. And so now I see what she's been saying. Yeah. It's just a matter of really just truly not settling.
Yeah.
At what point do you do that? Is there a way, I mean, I know you rate your 5 territories, but when you think of settling in your own life, how do you mitigate to make sure that you're not settling anywhere? Do you set like a big, huge goal, or?
It depends on what's going on in my life, but as I do those reviews, I like to put a little action plan with all of them. Even if it's not one that's a major priority for me right now, there's still a plan for it, right? So there's something that I'm going to do that maybe I haven't done, a little bit of challenge, maybe something I've been meaning to do that I just haven't done, right? And then, so there's always a step forward. There's something I have to do. Like, I can't just let it exist, if that makes sense,
Yeah. It's just something you need movement.
I have to have movement. Yeah.
And action moving in a direction. Even if you said earlier, even if you don't know what that direction is or if it's the right direction. Yeah.
I think you can relate to this when you're having a really, really tough time in business and you have to fix some really big issues. Maybe it's cash flow, it's really common, and you don't really know how to do it. You still build a game plan around it, right? And you don't know if it's going to work, but you always feel better once you start taking those steps forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Inaction is the worst thing, right? In my experience with everything, because you become stagnant. And where it gets really dangerous when we're talking about average or being comfortable, it's when people become comfortable in inaction. That's when you see things go downhill, really fast. I've seen this with so many men who've retired, they start dying fast because they're just comfortable not taking action anymore.
Yeah.
And they're stagnant.
This is probably something I've heard this quite a bit on the calls lately, is men completely lost. They've lost their ability to enjoy life, but they don't have any hobbies and they don't even know what they like anymore.
Yep.
Right.
Super common.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a lot of guys, if I ask them, hey, you have a weekend or 2 days off, Tuesday, Wednesday, completely off. You don't have to take care of the kids. Your wife's gone and you can't work. What do? Most of them are like, But that's also why, I mean, for myself, I ended up with 6 companies at one point, right? No sane person, has 6 companies. Yeah. But one is I like business. So I really enjoy it. And so when I got a business to a point that I felt like I could step away or was running by itself, I said, okay, what do I want to do? Oh, well, here's my other business idea I've been sitting on. You start stacking those up.
Yeah.
And then you get to a situation where you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. Now what? I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going snowboarding every day or, but trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do from fun that didn't involve a sport was tough for me. I had a really tough transition when I moved to Bend, Oregon, because I wasn't playing competitive sports anymore. And it wasn't an environment. I wasn't in Southern California anymore. So there was a season here where I couldn't just go outside whenever I wanted to. So that was for me, that was a really tough transition. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to go I'm not just going to go snowboarding for fun. I'm going to go every day, Yeah. And I started being militant about it, which was also not the right way to go.
Yeah. The balance.
Yeah. It's like, dude, find some more fun things.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. I think for a lot of us and a lot of men in particular, we go into those roles of protector and provider, right? And provider's the one that I think a lot of us go for really quickly.
Yeah.
But with that provider, like providing more and more, we want more money because we want a bigger house. We want more money because we need to get our kids a car. We want more money because we should take our family on a vacation. And so we work more and we get a side hustle or whatever it may be to bring more income in. And the crux of this is most of the men end up being resentful of the people they're providing for, and they feel like just a paycheck. And some guys cash out that paycheck by killing themselves. Suicide in the United States is the number 2 cause of death. I think in the UK, it's number 1 for men our age.
Wow.
Yeah. Number 1 in the United States is accidental death, which I think is probably a lot of suicides.
Yeah.
Right? Get the insurance money or...
Yeah.
I've talked to countless men who are like, well, they'd probably be better off without me. Let's just get the insurance money for them.
Yeah. Not taking that time to fill their cups and finding that. And the guys that don't have the hobbies, they don't know because they've lost themselves. It's just, you got to just take a step. Go try axe throwing if you need to. Go bowling. Yeah. Maybe it's not that you won't know what you're going to enjoy until you start trying to go do it. Right?
Well, that's one of the reasons. So we're here at the TPM Ranch. It's a 106-acre ranch that we bought for TPM events. So people don't think we're fully invested when we are in the movement of helping men. We have axe throwing here, but we have events here regularly, and it introduces a lot of men to 2 things. One is now you have a group of guys, because a lot of guys, as we get older, our friends and our friend base goes down dramatically, and guys start lone wolfing, as what we call it. And so axe throwing might be hard for some guys because they're like, well, who do I go axe throwing with? I do everything with my wife and my kids. And if my wife and I aren't doing well, not going to go axe throwing with her. So am I going to call a random guy from the job site or from work? So that becomes a problem. And the second thing is not knowing what to do. So I was telling you, so after guys go through our initial program, some guys are invited to continue on with us. We have several different other programs. One's a 1-year program called the Brotherhood. And it's more of a mastermind education style program that has a lot of growth to it. And in that, there's 2 events included, and one's coming up. We're going to Breckenridge. So there, we'll be introducing the guys to all kinds of new activities. And we don't tell the guys what we're doing, right? We tell them what to pack and what to do. So there's an element of surprise there.
Yeah.
And guys like me that like to put my hands around to have a little control, it's a little tough for. But, where it's Breckenridge is a ski mountain, so there'll be opportunities to ski, snowboard, sled. And some guys won't want to do that. But so there'll be other opportunities of doing things with like-minded men. An environment where guys will be introduced to things that they probably wouldn't normally be introduced to.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that fact of going out there. And I think I think back like my grandpa and my dad, I know that you can relate, but I always remember them going, they'd have like a guys bowling night.
Yeah.
Right? They'd go out that. And we've lost that in our culture.
100%.
We've lost that where we're like, hey, we got a men's night, we go bowl over. You know what I mean? And I think we need to get back to that and then find your tribe and find those guys that you need to, like, wherever it is,
100%, man. I mean, I found my tribe online with finding guys that weren't in my physical community.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of like TPM, and started growing there. Made some really great friendships.
And that's the great thing where we're at. It doesn't have to be in your physical community anymore.
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't have to be at all. And with the advent of technology, and you can travel and go meet. And so I'd go meet up with these guys every once in a while and go do kind of the bowling, if you would. But yeah, we don't have it. I think there's a stigma against it now. I know there's a feeling for me, and I still have this come up of like, I should be home with the kids and with my wife. I should be doing this. I should be doing that, rather than filling my cup or doing something that I really want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I travel the world hanging out with cool guys.
Yeah, you hang out with guys quite a bit, so you get that opportunity. Yeah. But I think what the realistic part is, yeah, absolutely. There's always going to be that. And there's probably going to be some lashback from your wife if you're not showing up for her properly. So that's not going to work out well if you're not supporting her on a level. She needs to be supported so you can go that. But it's also hindsight, right? You need to support yourself. You got to fill your cup, You need that group you can load some things onto so you don't have to load that on to your wife, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't believe your wife needs to or necessarily has to be or should be your best friend, right? That's too much of a burden to put on her. She should be your wife, your lover, and your guys you can have as your guy friends. I think that was just such an interesting thing because when I got married, I always thought, well, she has to be, we're going to be best friends. And we're really close, right? And we're best of friends. But I don't need to come dump my day in my wife's lap at the end of a work day, or I had not a rough day, but a couple rough meetings yesterday. We're trying to grow the movement to be much bigger, and not everybody's going to be able to come along for the ride. You've owned businesses, you know how that goes. And those are tough decisions, right, that you're making. And so my wife goes, oh, how was your meetings? And I was just, I gave her some information to what she wanted to know, but it wasn't the time for me to vent. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not that I needed to be there. And I think all too often, a lot of men, and myself in retrospect, I would just, dump everything on her plate, right, on her lap. And
I was in the same boat. And not only was she the best friend, she had to be my wife, my lover, we were also tied in many businesses we ran together. Yeah. So that is a lot on a relationship, right?
It's huge, man. Like, what is it? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. You were asking me how often I come to the ranch to work. So I live, for those listening, I live about 10 minutes from the ranch, from the TPM ranch. And I have a great place. So I have a home office. I'm from Southern California, so having a basement is like the coolest thing to me in the world because nobody I know has basements. So, and even here in Oregon, I don't know anybody else that's got a basement. So my friends in the Midwest are like, "What? Who care?" Like, I have a finished basement that I think is just amazing.
Your bomb shelter.
It is. Well, I put a one of those hotel locks in it that I can control from my phone, so I can lock the door and shut the basement. And so I have like almost 1,400 square feet of like this man cave at my house, and it's awesome. And I come here to have separation. My wife's a stay-at-home mom, and she works on her coaching business as well. So instead of always being in proximity, I'll come here and work just so we have some distance, we have some space. So when I come home for dinner or when I come home, there's this sense of newness that is created versus, I think after 2020, although I was doing it way before that, 2020, everybody started working remotely. And now you see, the husband and wife connected, and there's no separation. So when someone's irritating you or someone's on your nerves, there's no chance for that to be, it's like a scratch, right? Or an itch. You keep scratching over and over again because you see each other. So you need that space.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with my wife once, and that was tough. So it's a tough position to be in for a lot of people. Some couples do it really well, right? They do it really, really well, and some don't. And I'd be especially at that stage of our marriage, I'd be in the latter, going through there. All right, so going back to the topic of not accepting average, what are two things that you'd recommend the guys do if they're listening to this? We've kind of gone all over the place, but they're like, you know what? I am just accepting average in an area of my life.
One, evaluate where it's at, understand it, and build a plan around it. Like and not just consuming information, take an action step towards it, whatever that is. If it's in your relationship, grab a book, but do what the book says, right?
Yeah.
Listen to the podcast, but do what the podcast says.
Yep.
Sign up for the program, you know.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. You know, if you don't have a plan, find somebody who can help you build a plan.
Yep.
But find somebody who's done it, right? It's so interesting to me because in the coaching space, so in the business space, there's tons of business consultants who have never run a business, right? So they just all theory. I would never work with them. Ironically, we've at TPM's been around for about 8 years now. We have a 106-acre ranch. You know, you and I have kids. We've been married, and there are some people out there who are trying to. I think they're probably doing some good, trying to help men, but have never been married, have never owned a business, don't have kids, and it's just talking about theory. It's honestly like, now you have kids. Imagine taking advice on how to raise your kids from someone who's never had kids.
I remember myself without kids thinking I was going to give advice. And then I had them and be like, what the hell was I thinking? Right?
100%. So what I would say is, if you don't know what to do, find someone who's been down that road, right, before. It has theoretical knowledge, but also in the trenches knowledge, which I think is even more important.
Yeah.
And ask that person for a plan. Someone who is been where you are and has also gone out the other side to where you want to get to. I think those are the two keys, whether it be your health, like find a trainer who, if you're obese, find a trainer who was obese or has helped a lot of obese people become fit, not just someone who's good looking in the gym, because maybe they've always been, maybe it's just been easy for them. And do that. Awesome. Really appreciate the conversation as always, man.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
Yeah. Gentlemen, as we always say, in the moment of insight, take massive action. And that's what Chris is talking about here, right? He's saying, look, don't just read the book or don't just listen to this podcast. Hopefully you're taking some notes. Hopefully you're taking some action steps. Or maybe you just had the realization like, heck, you know what? My life, things are a little average. I'm looking around my house, my car, the gym I'm at, and it's not where I want to be. It's not where I deserve to be or aspire to be. Okay, great. Now make a plan, right? Make a plan on how you get out. And if you don't know how, find somebody to help you. Find somebody who's been where you are and has been to the other side and has a proven track record of helping people. That's better, right? You want somebody who can actually lead you by the hand to the promised land, right? Shorten time, collapse time. That's the key to this life. If you can make that change quicker, you'll win a lot faster. All right, gentlemen, have an amazing day. We'll see you next time on the TPM Show.